2025. We will begin our meeting with an invocation by Councilmember Kim Randella, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance by Councilmember Trent Thing, or Commissioner Trent Thing. Oh.
Don't be promoting me or demoting me.
Our dear, kind, gracious Heavenly Father, we're so very grateful to be here today, to be gathered here as a council and planning commission and residents of Highland. We especially are grateful for the city that we live in, for all the amenities it provides, and for the people that surround us. Please help us in this moment to be able to make the decisions that we need to make in order to provide for our future generations here in Highland. And we say these things in the name of thy Son, Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen.
I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay. Tonight we have our work session. We do have a consent item. Is consent item number 1A, which is approval of the meeting minutes from May 13th, 2025. Do I have a motion for approval of that? Or anything that needs to be discussed before we approve?
So Doug actually sent something to an email, so I just want to read it for him. It says, there's one update he'd like to make to the May 13th minutes. It says, there is nobody listed as others present, but both Sam Taylor and Aubrey Larson, both of Landmark Design, are referenced as having spoken, and he gives that information here, a picture of it, and it says, I therefore propose to strike the text none after others present on page 1 of the minutes, page 3 of the agenda packet, and replace it with the text Aubrey Larson of Landmark Design, Sam Taylor of Landmark Design.
Is there a second on that motion for?
With those changes, I'll second.
Okay, I have a motion by Sherry Kramer and a second by Ron Campbell. Is there further discussion or any further clarification needed? Okay, with that, we'll go ahead and I guess we'll just do a roll call. So we'll go ahead and we'll start down here with Wes.
Yes.
Scott?
Yes.
Kim?
Yes.
Trent?
Yes.
Chris?
Yes.
Rob?
Yes.
Sherry?
Yes.
Yes.
Doug? And Jerry. Sherry and then Jerry. Okay, that motion passes. We'll now move on to our next item. This is a presentation. Once again, it's a work session. We're going to be discussing once again the general plan and land use. Jay is not here tonight, so I assume we'll be turning some time over to Rob Patterson for the discussion.
We are hopefully wrapping up our land use discussion briefly of our modern income housing strategies and a couple of other things. Hopefully nothing too new from what we have in our current general plan, but we'll see where the discussion leads us. So I'll turn it over to Landmark, who've been eagerly awaiting this conversation.
Stephanie, I'm not sure.
Is your mic on by any chance?
It is.
Okay.
Can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay. Aha. Okay, thank you. All right. Pleased to be with you this evening. Just a brief recap of what we heard last time from the group. We had a great discussion centered around kind of economic development, commercial uses in Highland, so forth, as we kind of wrapped up the land use discussion. We kind of asked this prompt, what measures should the city use to support existing and desired businesses in Highland? And I think we talked at length about the town center, how that should be the kind of center of commerce for the city, also a center for regular events and programming, and really the kind of focus area for your community. And we also talked about the senior economy a little bit and supporting local entrepreneurship. Just a direct quote that Aubrey kind of popped in here from the meeting recording. Hosting regular events and creating traditions around those events will support our local businesses in the town center. I think that was a good theme that came out of our discussion. And so some of the key ideas around that, hosting regular events here in the town center, making it a central hub for community life, both from the programming aspect, but also trying to look at incorporating Highland Mains in this sort of bigger town center footprint as a mixed-use area that is sort of headed on a pathway towards having the uses people would hope for in a community center, in a walkable, and integrated hub, if you will, supporting local businesses. And let's see. Other things that kind of came out from the discussions, promoted community engagement, so building a stronger sense of place and identity through local gathering. Aging in place, we talked a bit more about that idea, and supporting families and individuals as they transition through life. And the ADUs kind of came back up as a topic that we're still feeling good about. And this idea of promoting a local identity through those gatherings, so building traditions that are kind of strengthening that identity as who you are as a community. Some of the sort of strategic opportunities that we've identified is kind of coming out of that discussion. We had some discussion at length about forming a sort of local chamber of commerce or similar group to advocate for and assist your local businesses. We noted that there are some limitations to the current staff and budget, so that's something that'll have to be explored. We can identify it in the general plan as something to explore in the future, and that'll obviously need some further fleshing out. Gearing more towards having senior-specific events and programming was also something that kind of came out. I think in general we'll have some points within the general plan, sort of gearing towards making sure that programming is well accounted for here in the city center. Support for mixed-use development to increase that daytime activity, and then a goal to integrate economic strategies for long-term growth and sustainability. And Fred from LRB, he'll be able to offer some additional insights through strategies in that way as well, beyond what we discussed. But I think that's generally the vibe we got as far as where to focus our efforts from a land use perspective with commercial and mixed use development going forward. So focus on the town center, sub center with down the Sitla South Gateway, that was kind of the wrap on that. So any questions on that before we move on to?
So let me just ask you, when we were here last month, like you said, we talked a lot about the town center and over across the way what we'd call the M&G property. Just want to confirm the council, because we've kind of reached out to the owners of the Highland Mains area, that once again, just to kind of confirm, what we heard last time was that there might be some interest in possibly doing some different type of housing, that maybe some housing we've seen here in the town center, but also extending that same type of housing over in the Highland Mains area. I just want to make sure
Just north of it.
Yeah. Just want to make sure we heard everyone correct.
Yes.
And since we're talking the town center and this moderate income housing element, as we kind of go over where we have the 10700 development here, that they are supposed to have two commercial buildings with retail on the bottom and office on the top. Is there anything in the town center or even over there where we're thinking, hey, would we like to look at the Highland Mains, or the 10700 area, and saying, hey, do we want to change that to be different housing there, or is the plan we have in 10700 the correct concept?
I'm surprised you'd bring that up as much as we've discussed that. We negotiated, because originally they wanted to put 220 apartments and things in.
They did.
We got them down to 42, 48.
Correct.
And, now, there are some alcohol sales. We've talked about a restaurant down there, and then commercial building up above.
Exactly.
I'm not sure there's a taste for a lot of increased higher density in that area. I don't know. We've talked about it for years.
We did. To be honest, that would, when you talk about, when Scott brings it up, back probably about 10 years ago is when that first concept came in of a kind of an apartments then then they try to do, different concept. I'll be very open, we see that development struggling. They have not moved forward. They're saying they're struggling getting office space. I just want to make sure as we're looking that that's not an area. Their concept, what they are approved for in the town center is retail on the bottom, office space above. They're supposed to put 2 buildings, and the rest, I think, was at 42 units. I think 42 units. So I just wanted to bring it up.
Well, and so are you talking like the alternative being a mixed-use idea to where it's some kind of commercial professional on the bottom and housing on the top?
That is what they would like for us. That, as Scott has said, there's been a lot of different times they've brought a lot of concepts.
Yeah.
They've come back in. I've met with the developer or the property owners or investors in it. They're struggling to get the concept there right now. They're not seeing office being taken off. We can wait. It's not something. It's what's approved. They can say, hey, will the economy change and the office might come back in? I just thought, just check to see if that's what we're still thinking in that area. If that's the concept, that's what we kind of move forward with. I just want to make sure.
So that would add a handful of units, right, for them, like residences.
I think if they were going to try to do something, they'd probably like to get 40 or 60 condominium styles above the retail. So I don't think they're just talking, hey, we want
Just
to
in
get
one little
we want to
box.
have 10 to 12. I think they're talking 40 to 60.
Okay.
I'm just,
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm Scott.
Been there, done that.
I think that would
I
survive.
thought they were just having a hard time.
Say that again?
I think that would do better there than,
Mix it up and
Senior house.
like, we can hold to something that's just not gonna work, or we could put something there that will not only work, but also help the commercial.
You think the
Yeah.
senior
Current
house-
market conditions do kind of point to residential mixed
I think
use
they're
as
gonna-
more
I think they're gonna need
successful.
that to survive, to be honest with you. I don't think they're gonna get.
And maybe that kind of, as we go into this moderate income housing, I don't know if that kind of will be part of that conversation.
above the-
Yeah.
Senior housing?
Do we
or
want
just
like a
regular housing?
little bit of a ghost town there or something at least?
Some of it also can be, and let's just be trying, some of it can also be the builder having a struggle with getting the units done versus the market having the struggle. Does that make sense? It can be, we always look at, hey, let's get this going on, but could it be a builder that's underfinanced than not getting things done, so.
Hey Kurt, is that area, the McKay area, is that
Yes.
zoned for alcohol license or no?
Rob, I think that would be in
Under
the,
the overlay?
no, because it's not part of
That's what I
our
thought.
We
CR.
called out
No,
CR, C1,
C1
and
and
Town
2.
Center,
Yeah.
and they're specifically not in Town Center,
They're
they're
not
in
in
their
Town
own
Center.
PD.
Yeah.
So
they're
that
not
would have to be
eligible for
changed if
alcohol
we want a
license.
restaurant in there?
Correct. Well, if you want to allow a liquor license for that area.
Anyway, I'm sorry. just-
Okay.
go ahead, Tom.
We can put a pin in that. Yeah, Jerry, go ahead.
I think it was Scott that brought this up,
They're not.
about getting our own zip code. For
Yes.
some reason, I've been thinking about that, because, to get the revenue, if that were in our general plan, would that help us get
You decided at the last minute.
our own zip code if it's,
You did, Adam?
If we had what in our general plan?
our own zip code? Scott talked about if we had our own zip code, we could.
I mean, it could certainly be an action item. Yeah.
that
To
would
work
be
Get our own
towards.
zip code,
So-
they put a post office there.
Okay.
Well, no, but what he's saying, let's put it in the general plan that we are also seeking a zip code.
To get the tax revenue, right?
Yeah, I talk to Mike Kennedy all the time, he says, tell me what I need to do. So I think we can get it through the
I
legislature.
think it would help if it was in an action item in the general plan, right?
What Jerry said.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Okay, we'll go back and we'll see as this conversation might lead back in as we talk about moderate income housing elements.
Okay. Any other comments before we move on?
May
Chris?
I make a comment?
Yeah.
So with regards to that, it seems like, especially in the current economic environment, anybody that is doing anything related to commercial, unless you're pretty skillful at it, they're struggling. So given the fact that we have a lot of vacancies in the existing commercial stuff, my 2 cents worth would be whatever we could do to kill 2 birds with 1 stone, and at the same time hopefully provide some sort of traffic without turning it into something unsightly. I would be very interested in
Right.
being flexible.
I think where the struggle here, I think they're able to find some retailers. I think their struggle is office. Right now, office is what's struggling. However, I've been in commercial and it's cyclical. You might have this year and some of it comes into interest rates. It's very expensive to build and interest rate. It's the same for a homeowner. It's very expensive right now.
Yeah.
Does that change? We don't know. I mean, during COVID, none of us would have thought interest rates would go down to 2.5% to 3%. The market does flow, and that's the only thing. We can always kind of, I get nervous. To me, I get nervous also doing an knee-gut reaction to all some change where next year it could be a different feel in the market. Maybe our tariffs are 50%, maybe they're down 50%, I don't know.
But we're not really changing, we're just giving him more options, right? He could still, I just feel like he needs more options to succeed.
Yeah.
Add in, allow them to take the risk.
Yeah, I think it'd be
Yeah, you
great
kinda
if it went office, but if
Make
it
the sandbox
can't-
bigger, so to speak. Yeah. Okay. I'm going to turn it over to you for this first bit. That's okay? Okay.
Okay, let's talk about moderate income housing. I actually worked for.
Interrupt you really quick
Yeah,
before we
go
get going. We do, just so you're aware, we do have one participant on Zoom who is struggling a bit to hear. So if we could be good about speaking into our microphones and trying not to have side conversations, because as our beautiful bright yellow signs, please remember that your microphone is always on. So those who are online are hearing everything to some level or the other.
So and I think you'll bring up, we do have Councilmember Brittany Bills, I believe, that's online. But we don't have Councilmember Doug Courtney that's here with us. And there's several of our planning commissioners that are missing. So.
Wait, who's on Zoom? Brittany is?
Yes.
You can whisper.
Hi, Brittany.
Where are the cookies? We want cookies, Brittany.
Exactly.
Where's our cookies, everyone's asking.
That was obvious.
I've got vending machines at hand.
Just to clarify, I double checked our code. The council actually did vote to add the planned, Apple Creek plan development into the alcohol license.
Yes, it was one of the compromises.
It was one of the, yes, it was back and forth on that.
Not that I'm in favor of alcohol, but that was in the plan, yeah.
That was ultimately that was kind of the compromise.
Going back to
council.
10700 or Apple Creek, what
They
we call
can
it.
have an alcohol license, though they're still limited. We still got 4 per city. So one's been used. We have 3 left.
But they could have one there.
Well, and isn't it
That's what I kinda-
per zone?
And it's 2 per zone,
Yeah.
so it's
2
whoever
per
gets
zone.
there first.
Okay, let's go ahead and we'll move forward. On moderate income housing.
We good? Can everybody hear? Okay. I actually worked for the Department of Workforce Services for about 8 years, and the year before I left, they wanted to put together a big report showing progress. So I remember at the time a big push was showing progress. So I think that's a key to the moderate income housing element. Okay, so if we go to the state code, these are the requirements. Your element should consider the legislature's determination that municipalities shall facilitate reasonable opportunity for a variety of housing, including moderate income housing. And this is to meet the needs of people of various income levels, working or desiring to live or work in the community, and to allow people with various incomes to benefit from and fully participate in all aspects of neighborhood and community life. The element should also include an analysis of how the municipality will provide a realistic opportunity for the development of moderate income housing within the next 5 years. Continued, it should also include a recommendation to implement the required number of moderate income housing strategies, and for Highland, that requirement is 3. The Planning Commission shall recommend to the legislative body the establishment of a 5-year timeline for implementing each strategy selected for implementation, and then for that timeline, it should identify specific measures and benchmarks, again, being able to show progress for implementing each strategy, whether one time or ongoing, and then provides flexibility to make adjustments as needed. So we're going to take a look at your 3 current strategies, but I'm also going to show the list of 29 strategies. We're not going to dive into any of those specifically, but I wanted to show you the list, and I think the question is, are you happy with the 3 you're currently pursuing, and do you want to look at other strategies? So there's 29. So it helps to evaluate these strategies based on Kind of this little matrix, I think, is helpful for thinking about it. So there's some strategies that have a high impact and they're low effort. So these are quick wins, easy to implement, yield significant results rather quickly. There's some strategies that have high impact but require high effort. So these are major projects. They require substantial effort and time, but they do have a large positive impact. There's strategies that are low impact, low effort. Those are fill-ins, they're nice to have, they're easy to do, but they don't really move the needle very much. And then there's strategies that might be considered low impact, high effort, and it does depend on the community. These are good to generally avoid. Okay, so just a few things to consider. Housing offerings in Highland are limited in supporting families and their needs over time. Moves between homes and communities can be very disruptive to a community and an individual's social fabric. Unavailability of smaller homes may result in a more homogeneous middle-aged community over time. Homogeneous. Joan asked me to pronounce facade.
Can I comment on that?
Yeah, go ahead.
I think that was the case, and it has been for many years. But some of the huge houses going in right now are kids. They're like, and that's because I'm older, but they're like 20s, early 30s.
Exactly.
So I don't know that that is as relevant.
And it may not be for Highland.
Generally speaking, I think it would ring true, but you're right that we are seeing some increased wealth in some certain demographics that are able to kind of afford the market right now, so, or are willing to take the risk. I don't know.
Hey, Rob, how many building permits did Highland have in 2023 or 2024?
Just off the top of your head.
Okay, the reason I bring that up, and I think everyone's seen me try to search, there was a news article that asked about the top 10 areas that had home improvements. The reason why I'm bringing up about income, when you talk about improvement, you guys show improvement. We put in Scott was about 5 years ago, a large development because of this moderate income housing. So I do feel Highland is showing improvement. I would guesstimate in 2023, we had probably close to 200 building permits. With that, we become almost one of the top 10 cities in the state of Utah with building permits. So this notion that Highland is this elite area, that we're not friendly to things, that we have to look, no, what we're talking about is Highland has been sensitive to that. We have 689 units that are being built. There are not going to be, if you look, now there's going to be some that are $1 million homes. I'm not going to say some, that Ivory area. Now we can't control what some of the things charge. Just like we're talking 10,700. Some of the struggles they might have is they're charging $1 million for a little townhome style. I can't, there is some things that they're not helping themselves for what they're trying to market. But Highland, I'd be curious, we'll come back to that, but as we talk moderate income housing, what we see show progress, I do think Highland has been showing progress.
So I agree with the mayor. The problem is there really isn't affordable housing in Highland. And one of the reasons for that is like he's talking about the Ridgeview development, the 689. There's smaller homes on postage stamp size lots. And originally, one of the council members wanted to buy a house there. He put money down on it. It's supposed to be $650,000, and which is not real affordable for a lot of people. And when he went back and checked with them again, they said, oh no, we really didn't have those. There's 750 starting, 800,000. And the mayor just talked about these townhomes over here where they want to put even more density in there. They're selling some of those for $1 million. So, I mean, the problem is developers, and I have patients who are developers, they're there, I believe in capitalism, all that stuff, but they're going to charge just as much as they can. So we can talk about putting high density all through Highland, which is usually what affordable housing means, but they're still going to charge a fortune for it. So how is it affordable? That's our dilemma that we're in.
Well, I think it's important to remember that the state's definition of what affordable is, or what moderate income housing is 80% of AMI. Right, so your average median income. Now in Highland, that's pretty elevated, right?
Yeah, we have the highest in the state.
You're almost 180.
Right.
Right. So 80% of that's like 150. So that is the target group that we're trying to create some affordability for, essentially, under the way the state looks at this. We're not trying to create housing to support a household making $60,000 in Highland.
Right.
So I recognize the issues around that, what you're saying, and like
Yeah,
what we
it's
define
a dilemma.
affordability as, it's pretty limited, right? So, but certainly there are things that I think Highland can make progress on, which we've talked about and we'll talk about tonight, which can help move the needle a little bit. And I think collectively, all the communities moving the needle a little bit is hopefully helping us out a bit.
What you're saying is we're going to take the average Highland income of a household, and then it's supposed to be 80% of that they need to be able to afford a house. I mean, is that correct?
That's ultimately the target group that the state is concerned with making provisions for.
Me and ChatGPT doing homework. Our median household income in Highland at the time was about $178,000.
Yep.
So we need to be 80% of that, and then we need to see if our homes will be able to, those who have that income of 80% of that would be able to afford it. Is that what we're kind of?
That's the idea.
And I have to say
now,
what we're doing over at Ridgeview probably would meet that.
It might.
Yeah, so historically, the typical home value in relation to salary was 3 times the salary. So that would be, give or take, $500,000 home.
536.
Now Utah as a whole is trending more towards 6 times the salary for what most housing is costing. So I think if we can, if you can bring in something that's getting below that, you're winning, right? And retreating back down to that. But it'd be right at $1 million, right? So yeah, it's expensive stuff still. I totally hear you. So
Mayor, just to the question, I did a quick report, and I'm not sure if I did it entirely accurately, but I showed up 198 single-family and multifamily, their townhomes permits for 2023, and
I don't think that's you, Rob.
I think it is someone else.
it is, it doesn't like me, and 203 for 2024.
So, I mean, look at that. So for 2023, we have what you just said, 198. 2024, 203. Anyway, as we're talking, I think what we're seeing is we're probably hitting some of the mark. Yeah. I'll ask ChatGPT if we're being the top. Sorry, keep going.
All right.
I think there's a reason there's 29 strategies. So it really isn't just one size fits all. Okay, where were we? A mix of housing types can help support a family-centered community, so different housing types for different people at different stages of life. And then another part of this is a lot of these strategies can directly support your economic strategies as well, and vice versa. Okay, so this is the full list of 29 strategies. Just pay attention to the things that are highlighted. We're going to talk about the things highlighted in green. These are your current strategies. And then if it's yellow, this was something that was previously considered on the table and discussed at some point.
And to add, we've looked at the remainder of the list as well as we've prepared for tonight. And our general feeling is that the majority of the other ones on the list are either not necessarily relevant to Highland, they kind of apply to more urban communities, or they kind of fall into the high effort, low impact category that Aubrey kind of mentioned earlier. Or there's something that might apply, but not necessarily right now. So for instance, removing impact fees for the construction of ADUs. We're entertaining the promotion of ADUs at this stage. We're not quite at this stage probably to repeal impact fees for them, right? But maybe down the road. So we're going to focus in on the current strategies that you have selected, and I think these actually make a lot of sense in light of the land use conversations we've been having with you. And so I think if you feel comfortable with these three, like these three, we can work on kind of creating those potential next steps for how those can see implementation happen.
When were those 3 drafted?
Just recently.
Just recently?
Rob, do you have a date on that?
I think it was 2022 or 23. It was fairly recent.
Okay.
Fairly recent.
Good.
Okay, so this is strategy E in that big long list, and it is to create or allow for and reduce regulations related to internal or detached accessory dwelling units in residential zones. And then there's these strategies that are related to the year. So in 2023, there was the goal to include a question about this in the city's annual survey to gauge interest and support, which I think we found. And then this year, review the results of the survey and see if there's a significant support for ADUs, specifically detached ADUs, and then work as a planning commission and the city council to update the development code to allow for them. So what we are showing here for a potential next step, so how do we keep the needle moving, would be to begin the process of drafting an ADU ordinance that aligns both with Highlands community goals, housing needs, and then neighborhood character. And then obviously there's some best practices to consider, things to help, consider owner-occupied requirements, rental license requirements, making sure consistent enforcement is in place so people don't get confused or like, why does my neighbor have to do this and I don't, So with that first one, how are we feeling? Are we happy with strategy E? How does that proposed or potential next step sound?
So we did, as you go through the strategy in 2023, we asked that question. 2025, yep.
Yeah.
So we've been following.
And I like the next step. So when are we going to do it?
So that's yeah. So the MIH element, it does require us to kind of put some benchmark timelines to these generally. So yeah, you would probably say that over the next, let's say, year, you're going to work on drafting this ordinance with the intention of adopting it a year and a half from now, and then you'd move into sort of monitoring stage from that point. Would be the further timeline.
Now, the Help the Plan Commission, do you remember,
Yes.
was it about a year and a half, or a year ago, or?
In 2023.
In 2023, you guys wanted to kind of do something with ADUs. And remember, we kind of pushed back a little bit, saying, hold it, we kind of wanted to do it in our step, because that's part of our monitoring capacity. That's why, because I wasn't trying to be, that's why we were trying to slow down, go, hold it, it's part of our, we've got to get our bonus points.
Yeah, so just so that everybody's aware, we, the Planning Commission, and pretty much everybody that is currently on the Planning Commission was involved in this. We've already got a pretty robust proposal that if and when the council feels like it would be appropriate, I feel like we've got a good straw man for you to at least address and discuss. And we spent a considerable amount of time over several months drafting and debating it. So if and when you may want to consider that.
So just, this is an article I read over the last week. Here are the top 10 Utah cities by the number of residential permits, new housing units issued mid-2023 to mid-2024. Highland did hit number 9 with 7.8% of the population growth through existing permits. That's why I was trying to kind of, based off our population, our number of units we have, and the number of units we've added, that's what I'm saying. When you talk about progress, I do think we're showing progress. Okay. I think, we're now number 9 in that progression, and you're up against Salt Lake City, Saratoga. So here's number 1, Salt Lake City. Number 2 is Saratoga Springs. 3 is Harriman. 4 is Magna. 5 is American Fork. 6 is Eagle Mountain. 7 is Lehigh. 8 is West Valley. 9 is Highland. 10 is Syracuse, Vineyard, and Riverton. Somebody's going, that was an interesting, that article was, that we're referring to is the Utah News Dispatch. So, it just as we're talking about this.
So can I ask a question? So in the strategy of the E, it says reduce regulations related to internal or detached accessory dwelling units. So sometimes it doesn't say internal because we've allowed internal ADUs for a long time. And so we've already met this to some degree. And I know there's a lot of interest for detached ADUs, but it just seems like it doesn't say internal and detached. It says one or the other. I just was
and there's a little bit of, as written in the state code, I do feel like this strategy is a little bit funny and vague, because after this was released and made law, the state came forward and said you can't outlaw internal ADUs anymore. So, so the fact that the word internal is in there are a few things the city can control, but it's pretty limited in what you actually can control around internals now. So,
Question here, I mean, I like it that it says internal or detached, because we're not talking about allowing an internal and a detached ADU on the same property, right?
no, it would be one or the other on the same property. Sorry, I should have spoken the mic on that.
Now, I think,
One or the other.
one thing when we're looking at it is Highland currently right now, in order to have an ADU we don't allow detached, but they could be as long as they have I guess it used to be a breezeway. We closed that in where it had to be attached to the house. And so that's something that, as we look through this, I know there have been some conversations, hey, are we okay if it's a garage? And I think that's where we kind of start talking, if it's above a garage, it's a certain square footage. And I think that's where we've been talking, we need to kind of feather out a little better.
Well, and the problem we got into with that, because I supported that originally, but then we had someone build an outbuilding bigger than their house and had a causeway in between. I mean, it happened in my neighborhood. So that caused a lot of stink.
Yeah, you're right.
Yeah, and those are definitely things that can be explored as you're coming up with an ordinance revision.
That's what you're saying, the next step. That's that feathering, that's where Chris, you brought up, the planning commission worked on some things. That's feathering and kind of getting it all worked out. So.
Yeah, I've worked with a community in the past on this very subject, and that's where you start to get into what's the maximum footprint of this, trying to prevent what you just described, right? What should the setbacks be on these? What's the fire access? All those things that need to be considered as you're kind of amending this. At the same breath, with the intention that you're trying to relieve the barrier entry, right? For people that are trying to do this. So what is passable, what is not? Those are some tough choices too.
I just got a text from Doug Courtney, who's watching this, and texted me with a very good point. He said, I think we should add infrastructure capacity as one of the things to take into consideration in case we get this soon, and would also like to see this added. We have to look at the infrastructure when we look at ADUs. I mean, I don't know how we would do it without doing that.
Yeah.
I mean, here's a famous one that we saw approved close to us. It's a development called the Alpine Hollows or the Ridges of Alpine or things. They approved 50 units, but they approved a casita that could be in the backyard that's 3,000 square feet, up to 3,000. And going, now hold it. Now to me, when we talk about infrastructure, that seems to have another heavier impact on sewer and on all other things that we need to look at. And this is the development that had asked or inquired about Highland, and we're still getting inquired, asking about coming on a sewer with the lift station. And we're going, maybe we could take 50 homes. Well, no, if you add another 100 homes. Yeah, that's, I think, what Doug, and I think Doug's bringing up a very good point, we probably need to add in as we also evaluate infrastructure. And I think that's what.
Yeah. And I will say that's something that Chris and I have had conversations about, because Highland has been planned for from a utility standpoint for R140, right? And so anything more than that can potentially stretch us. We do have some room there, and that's something that I absolutely agree. Maybe we've talked about, maybe do you put a limit, like a certain percent of a neighborhood could have these detached, right? To kind of make sure that we have the capacity there that we need.
Yes.
Can I ask one question before we move on to make sure I'm understanding? So on the potential next steps, I noticed you guys didn't, so it doesn't say detached or attached ADUs. And I want to make sure I'm understanding what the Planning Commission and Council direction on this. Are we talking about drafting an ordinance related to detached ADUs?
Yes.
Right?
Yeah, so the current proposal, and obviously it's malleable, but includes engineering assessments, size, footprint, rental, none of this Airbnb stuff, or some limitations, regulations around that. So it's pretty comprehensive in how we addressed it, but perhaps we missed something. It's really, the notion would just be, here's our best stab at it, And then the council can, you know, probably come up with some other.
No, and I think when I was listening, the planning commission, it might be only certain zones could have that, you know, an R140, an R130. Or
Yes.
It's being a little bit more limited on zoning, but that's in the weeds. But let's come back to Aaron. Are we talking about detached ADUs
Only.
versus right now our code states that has to be attached ADU?
Fucking detached.
I think we can, you know, look for the detached ones, but I think, Aaron, you brought up a really good point. We got to make sure that our infrastructure will support that. And I just worry about there's this push to build, and I think we're outstripping, not in Hynum particularly, but other cities are outstripping the resources. I really wonder where Lehigh's going to get all their water.
Well, Lehigh's actually one that when the state went to go put ADUs, they're one that were up with the state legislators pushing, saying our infrastructure cannot support everyone that probably wants to put an ADU. And so when we kind of say, hey, Lehigh's maybe the concern, they were one that was bringing the voice up, hey, be aware infrastructure could be a structure.
But we already allow ADUs for every house in front. It's just that they're attached. We didn't do an analysis then. It's the same thing. There's no difference between, if you detach it, you can't have an attached one. If you have an attached one, you can't get it detached. But currently, we've said every house can have an ADU, and we didn't do an analysis. So we either need to change now and look at it and stop even the attached ADUs, if that's the issue, but I don't think it is.
Well, that's just kind of, I think right now the state's the one that said you can have an inside ADU in every unit.
Yeah, now they're saying we can't even stop it. So regardless of infrastructure, everybody can today put an ADU on their house.
That's something that the council will have to kind of, bring up and discuss. I know that, like I said, the size, and things that way. The one that I talked about, Alpine Hollows, in their original proposal, they could not be rentals and had to be, things. Now, we all know that can change on a dime by going to council and also just change.
Yeah, if it's detached, it should only be like 1,000 or 1,200 square feet, because otherwise somebody's gonna do a detached on a 2-acre lot and build a second home.
Yep.
That's not what the intent is. It's supposed to be, most ADUs that are detached are limited to like 1,000 square feet, period. Owner occupied has to be one of the 2 units. You can't rent them both out. And we have all that addressed.
And we'll look forward to having that come in. The planning commission's done some work, and so we'll see that.
Yeah, if you
So-
want it bigger than that, you have to attach it.
Question for council and commission. Are you looking for an additional step in there that says, one of the potential next step is draft the ordinance, are you asking to evaluate infrastructure and capacity? Do you want that as a specific thing, or just as part of this, we know that we need to look at that concept?
I think we need to spell it out. I would like to see a separate step for the infrastructure. It's going to cost money. Yeah, I think what Doug's envisioning is that we do a study of our infrastructure, a thorough study, so that we know when it has to be replaced 20 years down the road or 5 years down the road. We don't know any of that right now. And capacity is a big part of that. So I think I would like to see a separate step.
Aaron, at one time, there was a comment made that we felt that most of our homes in our neighborhoods, we had about 20% we felt had ADUs in Highland. We were not able to back into where we were getting that, correct?
I don't know how to verify that number, Mayor, no.
I mean, as we all live in neighborhoods, we almost can say, okay, how many, even in our neighborhoods, I would guesstimate that 20% is probably accurate, about at least on our neighborhood where we in Trent live, it might be higher. I think in some of your larger lot areas it could be higher, and some others they can't. I know over in the Ridgeview, I don't think in PD, so each zone will also, that's why it's going to be important to go by zone. Different zones don't allow certain aspects in based off of certain things. We're finding out, like even home occupation, getting permits in a PD zone over Ridgeview, a person cannot do swim lessons there, but in an R140 they can. And so we have that would also be part of our ADU discussion, I think. Yeah. Okay, bring it back. So going back to Rob's, what you recommend, there's another step to do an infrastructure study as we look at ADUs. Is that was another step?
I agree with that. I think that's smart. Thanks, Aaron, for bringing that up.
And I think that was Doug.
It was Doug and Aaron.
So, So I just want to make sure everyone understands that the state will be looking for progress on that item. Do you feel committed to pursue that item over the next couple of years?
Yes, it's actually an item in our budget this year
Okay.
to do an infrastructure study. so
Excellent. Okay.
that should be good.
So may I, and I'm not in opposition, because to me it seems self-evident that if you're doing this, and that's why we did have city staff pretty heavily involved from the engineering point of view when we did the ADU thing. But R140 in Highland, you might have a 1,200 square foot home, or you might have a 16,000 square foot home that has a pool and, so I do think that I believe it's necessary, but at the same time, I'm not sure that we need to boil the ocean. So I agree with both, but I don't feel like it would be wise to say we can't do ADUs because we haven't done a thorough infrastructure study. Because from a practical point of view, in any case, that 1,200 square foot home that is being purchased and demolished is being replaced by a 8,000, 13,000 or 17,000 square foot home in any case. So whether we like it or not, our infrastructure is actually being pushed to the max.
Any other comments on this one? Okay, we'll move on to the next one. Okay, so this is strategy F in that list, and it is to zone or rezone for higher density or moderate income residential development in commercial or mixed-use zones near major transit investment corridors, commercial centers, or employment centers. So in the last few years, one of the implementation measures was to permit the remaining 425 lots for the townhomes, carriage lots, and cottage lots that have yet to apply for building permits in the Ridgeview Plan Development. And then in 2024, remove the requirement to include a commercial aspect in PD districts. Potential next steps. So this year, next year, work together to update the land use plan and the general plan to allow for higher density housing adjacent to commercial, retail, commercial 1, and appropriate planned development zones. And then 2027, work together to research and draft an ordinance creating a residential zone with higher density, such as a senior housing zone. And then this one's new that we're suggesting, explore options for mixed-use moderate income development in the town center, Highland, Maine's area specifically.
Taking a shot in the dark here and trying to interpret our conversation. So if we've missed the point, forgive us. But I think the intention here overall is one, to the mixed-use conversation within the town center we've talked about, and two, to allow for that Canterbury / Coventry, I got it this time, sort of density in some of the other areas in the city. But,
Can I ask a quick question?
go ahead, Scott.
So they talk about a major transit investment corridor. So, some cities are developing around Front Runner, or they have tracks.
And that's not you guys.
And that's not us.
No.
So our only transit corridors are highways.
Yep.
So is it a little different for us, or is that what?
And I think that's where we're leaning into the term commercial center, right? Really kind of looking at how do we approach things as they relate to the town center or out by Ridgeview.
And I think we also anticipated that perhaps we would, with the development of Central property on the south side, Ridgeview might expand down there, because that's also along that major highway there. We haven't done it yet because we're kind of waiting to see what comes out.
And then I think the Highland Mains is something we've discussed, and so I think, does that seem like potential steps up there, Edwin? Does that seem to be?
I like it.
Yeah, I love it, and I like the words explore options, because that still, allows us to have leeway of, once we have really delved into it and researched it, just that flexibility there.
Yeah, and that's actually the beauty of what the state's allowing in terms of progress, is like, if you guys are having conversations, that's progress. So in their eyes, so that's a good thing. Okay.
Okay, this was formerly Strategy U and now is T. Develop a moderate income housing project for residents who are disabled or 55 years old or older. So back in 2024, worked together to draft an age-restricted senior housing residential zone that requires a density higher than the city's typical residential zoning. Worked together to determine areas in the city where this zoning could be approved. This year, adopt the new senior housing zone and work with the state on application of that zone to state-owned property adjacent to North County Boulevard. Next steps, 2028. If no property owners have requested to rezone in appropriate areas, rezone areas determined to be appropriate by the Planning Commission and City Council. And then adding to potential next steps, explore a PD strategy tailored for senior and disabled housing. This could include zoning key locations with an age-restricted PD overlay that allows high densities and requires integrated amenities, accessibility features, and supportive design standards. Consider initiating a city-led PD project on publicly owned or high-priority sites. To catalyze development.
Just to kind of update, as different developers have come and approached the city as the mayor, I've encouraged senior housing. Does that make sense? Exactly what I was talking up there. That I've mentioned that if they're looking for a different type of zoning, that it would be the council has shown interest in doing senior housing, which I think is meeting this criteria that we're asking. I mean, so much so that I had a conversation with the Patterson, with Ross Welch, talked about, hey, why don't we look at doing senior? As we talked to McKay Christensen today, I said, if you're looking at something that had senior in it, you might see a little bit more further. I mean, everything, as we've talked to anything, as we even, what we call Area 52, we've talked to them saying, hey, they would like to get different zoning, let's look at senior, which is stating exactly what this is stating up there. So, which is one of the areas we see as a city, and I think we're still, as Planning Commission and Council, still interested as someone to bring in a senior restricted community.
Having said that, I totally agree. If it goes along the path of senior restricted, not senior targeted, I've seen too many times when we're going to target seniors and give us more density and we'll get that, and then it's $1 million and no seniors. I really would like to see age restricted.
That was the exact conversation that I had today with the developer, that they asked about doing an age targeted, and I said, I don't think the council would be favorable with that wording. I think it has to be restricted. Just because I think we've done a development where we thought we were going to get some more senior, and it did not come through that way. And so that was something, when we looked at Ridgeview, I remember Scott and myself and those others involved, we were trying to get that, and it didn't come through. They even pitched almost a home builder that has all these senior homes is going to take this section. Well, that didn't come about.
Wait a second. So the Boyer project off of North County Boulevard, they didn't put a senior element in there?
No.
They told us when we were here at all those community meetings that was going to be in there. That takes me off.
That's our concern, because they use it to get high density and then it doesn't happen.
Some of that, if you go in there, the homes by the Ivory development does seem to be more, it's more one story, it's not the two, it seems the way that it's structured seems to be more geared towards seniors, and we are seeing some that don't want to, where they have the main floor family, they do have it, but it's not restricted only to seniors.
I remember specifically asking them to be targeted, and they were like, of course, and wow.
No, but Sherry, we all heard the same pitch.
We heard the same thing.
So coming back, that's why I think we're really saying it's not targeted, it's restricted.
Restricted.
So I just want to comment on the second bullet point. I think we need to be pretty careful about, we've talked about that, a possibility on that, the property, on the state property or that, but their general plan's not going to substantiate that. And so I think we need to be kind of careful that we don't say, hey, we're going to do it there. And I think there's some real problems getting traffic in and out of there, as we've seen the traffic increase dramatically on Canal Boulevard between North County and Alpine. I mean, there's always at times, I think you'd said 14,000 cars a day. And, you know, and we'd have to link into that somehow to do that senior housing. I'd be surprised if it happened. So I'm not sure we should have it as a bullet point. I think it should be more as maybe a potential, depending on what happens with the master plan for the state land there. So I would think we ought to look in other places for senior housing and just not assume that. Do you see what I mean? Just from what I know.
Rodney.
Agree.
Do we have flexibility there? I mean, that's something we already adopted, right? Do we have flexibility to change?
You do have flexibility
Oh,
to
that's
change.
great.
Yeah.
How does it work in the fact that it's already 2025 and I don't think we're going to get something adopted this year?
That's a finer point I'm going to have to come back to you on.
Okay.
So here's my question. Tell me about the cities that haven't met these moderate income, what the state's done.
So there are a number of penalties in place. Basically, how the process works is if you draft, you know, and it's not, even if you draft a moderate income element, it's not to say that you're compliant. Right. Yeah. Getting compliance is a process with the state. If you're flagged as a non-compliant municipality, they start to withhold various tax funding sources from you. But you're also fined. There's a fine in place now, and I can't remember the amount per day, but it's a per day fee now. So it's.
Has any city been had it happen?
I think since they instated the fine, I don't know of anyone that's been challenging the state on this anymore. So before that, there were certainly communities that were opting to be non-compliant.
But so Scott, what you're bringing up is what we're seeing, and the reason why Councilmember Scott Smith brought it up is that we might have put this forward a couple of years ago, but we're not seeing that the property owner is necessarily moving forward with maybe wanting to have that on their property.
Yeah. Right.
So that's something we don't control. We might say, hey, as a city, we're willing to do senior housing there, but if the property owner's not interested, it's pretty hard to, you know.
Exactly. So
we could, I guess, go and say, hey, this is what our zoning would place.
So in filing the housing report, the annual report, it'll be important to note that, you know, what you've had those conversations, you've tried to make some sort of conversation there, and this is the result.
Well, and it's the state, and so we ought to hold them now accountable because they're not letting us meet our modern income housing. Yeah. It should go both ways. They want us to. You're the one stopping us from getting it. I say we enact $180 a day penalty.
Well, this year, the state picked Boyer to do that project, and then they didn't put the senior housing in that we asked them to.
$250 a day.
Yes.
So go up higher?
I understand your concerns, but I think that 2025, like Aaron, we can say we adopt a new senior housing zone, but I really don't. I mean, I knew some of the discussions that were going on because I'm on the USDC board. I don't remember that we adopted as a council that we were going to work with the state and turn that into senior housing, because the master plan's been up in the air there for a year and a half.
Yeah, I thought we just said that could be possibly in the area that happens.
It's a possibility, but I don't remember as a council saying, hey, we're going to do that. We adopted the senior housing zone, but I don't think we said it was going to be there. I think there was some in the background discussions. But I think we just have to be careful saying, oh, we've already made that decision, because I don't remember making it for first. Yeah.
I believe so.
Where are we getting?
This is what you have. The top 2 points is something council has already adopted. Is that correct?
Top three, the ones that have dates are ones that we have in our general plan.
How long ago would we adopted it? So that was before we understood what the state maybe wanted to do. I mean, the state of Utah, their property is trying to move forward and get I think a master plan themselves. Is that right, Scott?
Maybe we just tweak that second bullet point with
I
what
just
you
tweak it to
proposed.
say we've adopted the senior housing plan, but I didn't think we decided to put it there, because that's been in the process of discussion. And I can't imagine we did it 2 years before they even started discussing it. So I think it's just interesting.
Luckily, it sounds like we can tweak that.
Yeah, if we can just tweak it a little bit.
Question for you guys. This one is all about senior. The one prior, though, had some senior component to it, it feels like. Or maybe I'm misunderstanding that.
Yeah, the 2027 item.
And I'm wondering if we either do senior in one or the other, or is it a benefit for us to do both there?
I don't know that it's necessarily a benefit to do both. It might make it cleaner to simplify it, which we can certainly do.
One last question, or one last comment, I'll say. I'm concerned about the very last sentence on the page, the consider a city-led PD project. We don't have Highland at this point doesn't have a strong community development department who would take on something like that. So I guess that's with our current staff, I worry about that. So that's a question to Council and Planning Commission. Is that something you would like us to potentially move towards?
I don't see it really ever coming about where the city would be the ones leading out a senior project, and what property would it be? I mean, I guess the only property I can see it maybe happening is up there at the gravel pit. You know, because we have 10 acres. Other than that, I guess, are we going to go down on the other side of Dry Creek Lake? I'm just going, are we going to take out park property? I mean,
we can certainly have a conversation or high priority sites, right? Like that would, I think that is intended to be privately owned, right? We can have a conversation with whoever owns that, but that doesn't mean we can compel them to.
It does say consider initiating.
That's true.
So we've considered it.
We can consider it.
No.
That's true.
Done. Let's report that progress.
We got an answer. We considered it. No.
Just a thought, and if there was senior housing, I'm assuming that those individuals would want to be in something like a town centre where they could walk to a doctor's office, walk to an accountant or a lawyer or a grocery store. And so I'm not sure if we should be prescriptive in saying, we've decided that you need to be down south there where there's nothing in the middle of nowhere and you have to drive everywhere. That just doesn't seem very practical. To me it seems, but I'm speaking out of complete ignorance, I would prefer to be in a place where you could just go waddle down the street to get whatever you needed.
I agree with both Chris and with Aaron's earlier point that we don't, if there's anything that we're putting in that we're seriously anticipating a city-led effort, we shouldn't be putting that in.
Thank you, Doug.
Thank you. Acknowledged.
Good.
To Chris's point, I agree with what you said. I think that would be the ideal situation. But yeah, it is difficult to play this game of identifying where you want it versus where it's available. So
yeah, I'm not suggesting this, but I don't know if the group would consider whatever property is available in the town centre area, or maybe as it expands, possibly, for that to be an option for developers. I'm not pushing it or opposed to it, I'm just throwing it out as an option, just to say if our commercial and retail establishments are struggling here, wouldn't it make more sense to give them more carbon-based life forms that have wallets and credit cards that may be interested in purchasing and helping the local economy?
Well, being transparent. So we brought up about 10700. When they brought up about having commercial, I said, is that something you'd be considering senior housing? You know, and because I said, you know, the council, if you're trying to do something senior, there might, you know, that might be something you could come talk with them on, you know, but that they didn't seem to grab a hold of it. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So, but that's what I'm saying. With the developers, we're saying, guys, we see a need in our area for senior. That's what you're seeing screaming in some of our things here. We believe a senior product. So.
And I think part of that, I mean, we could tweak it a little bit to say a planned development strategy or an overlay type concept. Again, leaving it vague, because it might be something of saying we could apply this as an option on top of certain properties. You know, if people like it, doesn't necessarily kind of force any kind of change, but we can
just to provide.
Sometimes it helps developers to understand. You know, the city will go 6 units an acre. if it's this specific category, rather than trying to have, like with Apple Creek where they came back and forth, how many times we're negotiating down. If we just say, here's the number the city is fine with as long as this list of conditions is met, and we'll give it to these areas. Whether that actually gets built or not may be something, and I'm not trying to get into the weeds, but that is something we could explore as part of this. That'd be the city-led part of, do we want to give a framework for people to work under, or not? We'll consider that going down the road.
I'm going to make just a little comment. So this is kind of anecdotal things, but I attended a political meet and greet last night, and I was talking to a retired orthopedist that lived in American Fork forever, and I said, well, where do you live now? Because he was here to the Highland. He was a delegate and different things. And he lives up, about 10, 12 years ago, we approved an area of, quote, senior housing, some townhomes up in Sky Estates. And that's where they live, and they're very happy there. And they're not in town center. So I understand what Chris is saying. It'd be nice to have everybody in town center, but we do have Sky Estates, which has some senior housing. Basically, it's townhomes. And we've got Ridgeview, and there are a lot of seniors that live there, even though it's not classified as totally senior housing. Plus, we have the town center. So I just thought it was interesting because that's where they moved up from American Fork to Highland to live there. So it's cool.
Okay, any other comments on this one? We feel good about this strategy still? Okay. That's basically that slide. These are the three currently selected strategies. Do you feel good about advancing on these further? Are there any others that you want to discuss?
So a few minutes ago, we talked briefly about, do we keep these two strategies since they're so similar, or do we do one or the other? Was that what we were talking about, like consolidating them or getting rid of one of them and adopting a new third strategy?
Staying the course.
No, there was just a implementation item within the second strategy that seemed like it fit better with the third one. So, but keeping the three is the current.
Gotcha. Okay.
Proposal.
Well, as the mayor said, they seem to be working.
Yeah. I honestly feel like these three really fit the general direction that you're headed as a city and what we've talked about in our land use conversations as well. So.
And I know this could kind of sound a little weird, but I think we have to be careful sometimes trying to making too many changes to the city in areas. Okay, we want to keep gold. Does that make sense? And so some of the other cities, they've struggled to come with modern income housing because they gave their gold away early. Does that make sense? And if we have our Lucky Charms still together, we need to be careful as a city. We still have some gold we can give. And so that's what I'm saying, as we go through the process, just be aware there's other strategies that can be chosen in the future.
We haven't given away our gold.
We haven't given away our gold.
So, can I just say something, Mayor? I agree with that. So as I've talked to people in some of these meet and greets, people are kind of panicking about the density in Lehigh and the traffic and all that stuff, and they have to drive through it to get to Highland. And what I heard is people really want us to be open and more rural and do what we can. And of course, we're talking about different types of housing here, but I think we want to keep our city as low density as possible. We want to keep open space. Because I had people say, we moved here so we could have a yard so our kids can play in it. We moved here because of the open space. We moved here because of the parks. So I think we have to be careful in our general plan not to take that away. Because as I've said before, we're not an island in the Pacific Ocean. If you want high density, if you need a smaller lot, if you want this and that, you can move to our adjacent cities. You don't have to have all of that in Highland, in my opinion.
So I agree totally what Scott's saying, and I'm going to add on the other. And we know we're in a political political year with elections. Highland, where we're different than a lot of the other cities, we've stayed true to our general plan. Where we said that we would do a little higher density, we've said and keep it there. We have not went in and added higher density just amongst some of our communities. And I think that's a really important aspect Scott's bringing about. Our residents have come in certain areas. They're all great residents. We're finding those who come to Ridgeview are really good people. But I think we've made sure, as we're going through the general plan, I'm advocating for the future. Guys, this is what we're saying we're going to be looking at for the future. And we do have areas of the town center that can be a little higher density, that is going to meet different income needs. We've done that over at Ridgeview. But please, as we look forward, as we do the general plan and say this area is supposed to be this type of zoning, keep to it, because our residents have invested or have bought into that vision.
That's right.
And that's why I think what Scott's saying is they bought in that they'd have open space. Now, if we also take the open space away, that changed their vision or what they moved here for. And we are, and as you talk economic, we are hitting economics where people are putting in large investments. But we're getting good residents who are here in the town center. We have mixed use in the town center. We have mixed use over at Ridgeview. That's when we talk about moderate income, where I get stuck on. We have been sensitive. We're not trying to be elitist here and just only certain type of individuals. One of the concerns we heard, I remember 8 years ago hearing, where do our kids move? Now we try to get Ridgeview where, okay, they still came in higher priced. It didn't matter what, we tried to do some things and we couldn't do some things. We can't control the market.
Yep.
So. But I fully agree with what Scott's saying, that that's what some of our residents, I can laugh. We saw a chicken at our city center today, or at our community center. We're right there, and that's what I love about the city. There's a chicken.
Come to my house.
We had a turkey in our front yard. I don't know where it came from.
But that's the teachers.
So I agree with Scott, both in his sentiments and what he's hearing, because I'm hearing the same thing.
Yeah.
And one thing that I do, and I don't know if you've taken this approach, as we've spoken about Coventry, and kind of using that as an example of a type of higher density that we're exploring. And I think every time I brought up Coventry, the response has been positive.
Love Coventry.
Yeah, they're like, oh yeah, that's a great looking development. And when I say now that is kind of an example of the kind of higher density to meet this mandate that we're exploring, the reception has been positive. Have you had any of those kinds of conversations specifically about Coventry or?
No, people like Coventry.
Mm-hmm.
Well, you can tell that that's the type of housing that is wanted here in Highland, because Coventry, it's very hard, it's difficult to find a unit for sale there, and they don't stay for sale very long, versus like the 3-story units that's being built at Apple Creek, those are not selling. And so that definitely shows us that, the higher density areas are more in higher demand at a, one level, because it's senior housing. That's what the seniors want.
As a senior myself, I'm there now, I love Coventry. Now, some of the things is because they have open space around. It doesn't, and you might be a little more dense, but you have some open space. That is the group that I've tried to share really over there at the Longhorn, because I think they gotta have to buffer from Bull River, and I thought, well, put your open spaces that buffer, but put some senior along that. But that's what you guys are hearing, is what we've always heard. They love this Coventry product because it doesn't feel, yeah, it's dense, but they still feel it's an open. So I agree with what everyone's saying. I'd almost ought to be one of our strategies, more Coventry.
More Coventry.
All right.
I wish it was greener out in front of it. That's the only thing I said. When I drive past today, it was a little scrubby.
Okay, we're going to take a hard turn all of a sudden and move to another. It's kind of related. I don't know. Yeah. It's infrastructure. Yeah, okay. New element. And this one should go quickly. We're going to talk about public facilities. Generally, what I'll say about this is that there are often long-range plan studies that govern a lot of this. The general plan's role is to sort of identify needs at a high level, right? And start sort of targeting areas in which you want to move certain needs that you might have as a community. There are a lot of things you're already providing. You probably provide most, if not all, of the things on this list. And what we're interested in hearing from you all is, here's the list now. Thank you. So you've got all these things, right? And what we're interested in really gleaning from you all is what needs are you hearing from city staff, from residents, as to where the city might be able to flex its muscle further in the future to provide for identified needs. Now, as we have this conversation, there's this slide. What do you want to say about this? This was your slide.
I think staff requested we temper our expectations. This came from your last budgetary report, I guess. So showing revenues and expenditures and a bunch of line items. So it's tight, is my understanding.
Yeah. So all that to say, basically, as we're going through this, I think there's two lenses we can look at the conversation through. Is, considering what Highlands' needs are, what the wish list is, so to speak. What are the needs if money was not an issue? Those areas that maybe there's some future exploration to be done, but we haven't identified funding yet. And also kind of tempering that with the reality of a real budget and what can be done. So that in mind, over to you.
One thing I've heard from people as I've been talking to them is they want to know what's going to happen to the gravel pit area. And there are residents that live there, and they say when it's mined out, which we hear it's extended all the time. And I've told them a little bit about, some of the ideas of recharging that area, but a lot of people would like to see that look park-like, at least. I don't know if we can put a big park there, but they would like it look something different than the gravel pit. So that's one area I'd like to look at. So you had a list of all the other things there too. I've had a lot of people come to me and they're worried about culinary water, and I tell them that we've been deepening our wells and that we're in pretty good shape there. But a lot of people are concerned about, are we going to chlorinate? And they were asking, are we fluorinating our water? And I said, well, I don't think so, because the state just kind of said we don't do that anymore. But, so there's a lot of questions about that. But I tell people, I think we have a good plan, thanks to the city staff and that, for our long-term utility needs. I mean, we're relining a lot of the sewers. We've been working on the culinary wells. We've got some issues in the future with our pressurized irrigation. But I think what I hear more than anything, besides the Longhorn property, because everybody asks about that, is the gravel pit area. What are you going to do about it? And so that's something I'd like to look into.
Could I ask a clarification on the chlorinating of the water? I understand that we're putting the equipment in to chlorinate just in case we have to chlorinate. We have no plans to chlorinate, or are we even putting equipment in?
We are retrofitting all of our wells to be able to chlorinate. We're very close to be able to, but we will not do it until council tells us to do it.
And that would only be on an as-needed basis for the water?
Once you chlorinate, and we are done, and we continue to chlorinate. We are only one of 2 cities in Utah who currently do not chlorinate. While the state has not yet told us you have to, we are worried that they will at some point, and we feel like this will be a long conversation staff and the council have to have, but it might be better for us to willingly do that before, number one, the state tells us we have to and you have to meet certain levels, or number 2, before we have an issue. I mean, I was looking up that report the mayor was talking about. We're actually, when you look at it from a percentage standpoint, we're the 3rd fastest growing city along the Wasatch Front. That's insane for the past year. I had no idea. I mean, I knew that it was bad, but I didn't realize. I mean, from a percentage, right? I mean, from a number amount, that's a different conversation. But the more connections you get, the more risk you get of a cross-contamination. And when we're talking about drinking water, that's a really big deal and really scary.
I've not talked to any residents that are excited about chlorination.
I understand, but I don't think that, I think we have been lucky to this point to not have an issue, and staff works really carefully to try to make sure that there's not an issue when we know about somebody touching our lines, but unfortunately, the more people you get in a city, the less things just happen without our knowledge. So, and we can't protect when that happens, when we don't have a chlorination ability.
So a lot of the people I talk to already think we're chlorinated now.
That's interesting. Yeah. Did you say chlorinate or fluoridate?
Chlorinate.
Okay, because we do not fluoridate our water.
We don't fluorinate, and I think the state's outlawed that.
It has.
They outlawed fluorinate.
Yeah, fluoride.
Right.
I still prescribe it though. To kids.
I still use it in my toothpaste.
Yeah, I do too.
So I have something, and it's been a while since I know where we're at with it. Maybe you guys do. When I looked at it before, we were giving all of our affluent water away, right? Most cities will retreat their water and then use that water to water lawns, do whatever. And last time I was looking at it, and we were sending it down, and it was being treated, and they were just using it. But we had no recapture, no benefit for giving it away.
They have to pump it back up to us.
Or
We were doing.
we treat it ourselves, or
Well,
we sell it to them.
So what was a plan at one time was that we're part of the Timpanogos Special Service District for sewer. That where there is some water claimage in the sewer. And we thought we were working out a trade process where American Fork would use it and then we would trade out. But it appears the Timpanogos Special Service District did not approve that. Is that where it got stuck?
We have a reuse application pending. We have a reuse application pending before the state. I'll try yours. Maybe it's just me.
It's just you, Rob.
That's probably true. Reuse application pending with the state that we and all of the cities around us join that are part of TSSD to do that, to reuse, to treat the effluent and then put it back through our irrigation system. Or rather, because most cities can't connect directly to TSSD, to have American Fork use that water and then they'll trade us extra water because now they're getting our irrigation water, so they'll give us irrigation water.
So is that still happening?
That's still pending before the state engineer. The indication is it's probably not going to succeed. There's been a lot of fights over water in Utah the last couple of years, and indication is the state engineer will probably not approve that reuse application, which means we can't treat and then reuse the water.
So they get their water and their water.
Yeah.
You get to send it to Great Salt Lake.
The big code change from the state was basically if any of your water theoretically could impact the Great Salt Lake, you have to let it keep going there and you can't change it. Even if under water right law, you have the right to fully deplete the water, because you haven't been, that means that water still needs to flow to the Great Salt Lake or to Utah Lake and then to the Great Salt Lake. So it's been a fight we've been having with the state engineer, us and a lot of cities.
They treat it before it dumps into Utah Lake, and so
Yes.
it's treated before it gets to Great Salt Lake.
I have told my kids for 10 years, don't go in the sprinklers, because in every city I've ever lived in or worked in, you reclaim the water.
There's
It's got
very few in
pheromones
Utah
and-
County who do. Santaquin is one I know that completely does, but there's very few in this part of Utah County that does.
No, sure, you just made it coming. I told my kids not to go in the sprinkler.
Well, then I was told it was river water, and I'm like, I go in the sprinkler now. No matter how well you treat it, the pheromones are still in it. But you can get, it's never fully done. But it's a big resource. I mean, that's why there's golf courses, is because cities have to store it somewhere.
So all of our, we don't have an area, so that's a question that Jerry's asking. I don't know if we can reclaim, I don't know if based off agreements with TSSD, if we could try to reclaim it here.
We have to get approval from the state for a reuse project.
We probably won't.
We probably won't.
Other major services provided, I mean, okay, we got our library up there, but there is one that we do hear from residents that you asked about if we had unlimited money and it was just coming in and flowing forever, that I'm sure the residents, some would love to have a rec center.
Yes. Community center, rec center.
Community center, arts council building, they want a swimming pool. I'd love to have a military museum,
The Heritage Foundation having a museum. I mean, there's all kinds of needs.
You wouldn't have those in the same building.
No, but I'm just saying, if you brought up a thing, if money was not an issue, we sure could do an awful lot. The problem is, money is an issue.
Exactly. But I mean, I think the idea here is, all these good things in communities are kind of born out of a vision, right?
Yeah.
The purpose of a general plan is visioning. So if the general plan identifies something like a community center as a priority, it sort of starts the snowball rolling, and over time you find the way to fund that and keep that going. So it's not to say that you're going to identify all those steps in this plan. You probably just say conduct a feasibility study and you leave it at that. But that's kind of the thought here behind this element.
But let me clarify.
I mean, there's the community center, because we've had representatives from the Art Council and the senior citizens. They would like some place where they could expand services, but the rec center is a different.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's the rec center, and I think
It could be a combo. There are
well, it
combination
could be
centers,
if we
but-
had the place
yeah.
to put it. But you have to, the same with the rec center, most people, I think, want aquatics.
Now, I think what you're trying to ask, and this is kind of, we have our library, do we, and this will be a conversation, we have a joint work session with our library board coming up at the end of the month with the city council. Do we see the library expanding? That, the next thing is we have the property across the way from here. What is our vision for that? Is that a community center area? Is that where we would have our historical museum? Is it the, I think that's what you're asking.
That's exactly
what
what
is
we're
our
getting at.
future vision on, are we envisioning that, what do we envision across the way? What do we envision with our library? Do we, the library, and this could be a conversation, the library right now uses this room for their programs. They've done a study of building a building across the way. They came back and thought it would maybe be more feasible to do an addition. Is that something that we would envision in our general plan? I think that's what you're trying
That's
to
exactly what we're kind of getting at.
Are we envisioning that we would then move our community center and build something over here? I know, if you had a nice large donor that would probably come in, I assume if a donor said, hey, I'd like to donate $10 million and I would build a building, the problem is the city then would have to take on the maintenance and the ongoing costs.
Exactly.
And that's, but is that what you're talking about for future visiting of what do we see on this property across the street from here? And that's supposed to be in our general plan.
So let me just add to this. I'm just going to go back to the library a little bit. So I was talking to one of the candidates who's running for the Alpine City Council, Sarah Blackwell, and she was saying there's a lot of interest in Alpine to have a library. And she wanted to know, well, how is it having our library? And I says, well, why don't we work together and have a joint library? I mean, rather than trying to have another little satellite library, because I said it's hard to staff and maintain a library. Why not join with us? And I understand one of the council members has been approached not too long ago from Cedar Hills, willing to pay a large fee just to let their residents work in our library. They pay the city of Highland. Have you heard that? And so I'd like to see in our general plan maybe saying we're going to reach out to these other communities because they can duplicate services if they want to. It's up to them, but why not have them participate more in our funding of our library, and we could expand our library a little bit or whatever. I don't know, it's just an idea. But I thought I had an interesting discussion last night. I said, Sarah, why don't you just talk to people and say, look, let's join with Highland in making it a joint library. I mean, we share Lone Peak safety. Of course, that's always an issue, but.
Yeah. I think that's a fabulous idea, honestly. And the same could be said for rec centers too.
Sure.
One of the great strengths in Salt Lake County is their library system. It's a marvel, the amount of services and inner loaning of materials and things.
So that's something that we could put down. We're one of the few. We just started in North Utah County's area that we are sharing books.
Yeah.
That's very Pleasant Grove and American Fork and Highland. And we have the consortium that we're also part of NuClick, which there are some things, and I don't know if that would be more underneath the library strategic plan or if it's in our general plan. Where does that fit?
I think you could use the general plan element to sort of identify that you want to support the library and support interconnected libraries with other cities, and then leave it to the library's strategic plan to kind of explore the details of that.
Is that something we'd like to put in that we are supporting?
Yes. Yes.
Now,
Wes and I say yes.
Now, you're going to left and wrong. The only reason why I kind of hesitate, it appears right now we are borrowing more books out. You'd think the small library, but percentage of it, we are borrowing more books out than our residents are bringing in.
That's because of our book selection, which we do a phenomenal job at. I mean, it really is. That is the reason that is skewed that direction.
What you're saying is we recognize that, hey, the other libraries might say we need to have a wide vastness where we are, because we're smaller, we're focused on, hey, we're really focused on really the top books, and we're going to bring them deeper, which the other libraries might not go as deep in some areas.
Well, Highland, or Alpine, is paying for the non-resident fee. Big portion of it.
Residents are.
Right.
Can I
But
just
why not join together? I just,
Sorry.
Go ahead, Sherry.
I just want to give you some food for thought. So I remember when I worked in American Fork, we were subsidizing the fitness center. So I just pulled it up on AI, and it says as of March 2025 financial audit, the fitness center is subsidized by the general fund by about $843,000. So it's pricey.
Pricey.
Yeah.
It is.
What we're kind of taught from a, recognition standpoint is a fitness center, a rec center is going to fund about 80 to 90% of what it costs ultimately. And so the general fund has to fill in that gap, right? Really good ones can go beyond the 90%, but 80 to 90, and I don't know what the percent is in American Fork, but it can be a sizable gap, right? That has to come from somewhere.
So.
Can I ask you a question of Sherry? Because you served on the American Fork City Council. How much do you know how much they bonded to build that rec center?
That was before my
Your time.
But I think it was sizable. It was a sizable amount.
So right now, American Fork, and this was Rob Shelton put this in the American Fork Citizen, they have $80 million in bond debt.
How much, 80?
$80 million in bond debt. And bond debt, I said that wrong. But, and the budget in American Fork was passed at $148.7 million. They're twice the size we are, but their budget's 4 times. And they thought it was economical. So it's kind of interesting when you compare cities. So I'd like to know how much they bonded for a rec center, because we'd have to bond to do that.
Yeah.
This, if I could stick on the topic, but just throw in my 2 cents worth. I haven't quite figured out what our competitive differentiator is. If you were to think of Highland as a business, it used to be charming and it used to have some unique characteristics, but now it's just chopped up by lots of roads, high speeds. It's sort of a higgledy-piggledy mishmash of high density up in the foothills, where you would sort of imagine logically you'd have 20 acre, 10 acre, 2 acre, 1 acre, and then high density around
The center.
thoroughfares or city centers. And so to me, I would be struggling to go, what is our value proposition? What's the core thing that makes it attractive? And we're built out, so we can't go back and legislate the past. But,
Parks and trails.
yeah, so that's something where we can make it incredibly unusual. Draper City has done a tremendous favor to us. Those are world-class mountain biking trails. They really are. You've got Lambert Park. And so if there was a way to make Highland this very aesthetically attractive place that had very safe roads, where there was a lot of traffic calming and this heavy emphasis on spectacular trails and interconnected, little children zooming around on bicycles or adults on mountain bikes. This is in the wish list of unlimited funding, but just something along those lines of, why would you move to Highland versus somewhere else? It would be, to me, could be something that we could do in a sensible way that would be realistic for us. Because, Murdoch is awesome. I hear from a lot of residents saying, you have no clue how amazing the trail network is, even though it may not be completely...
Yeah.
So let's talk,
It's a great strength of your community.
Let's talk, what is the strength of, now let's look at this, and we are the highest income in the state according to news articles. Why are people coming to Highland? What are we attracting? What is our good karma? Or it is our parks and trails. It's exactly what Scott's talking about, that open feeling and open space. Some will talk about, hey, your open space communities that concept didn't work. It did. And it's helped keep us feeling more open. At least for me, but our trail systems, one of the things the council, I think, has spent a lot of time working on, you talk about the Murdoch Trail, is trying to get connection to that Murdoch Trail wherever we can. And I'll bring it up. We just connected in the Canterbury area, our city center trail to the Murdoch Trail. That's been 20 years. We're now going, I wish we could get all the way down, but we are now going to get down to 9600 North, a new trail that goes up to the Murdoch Trail. The city just purchased property where there's a gap from our city center trail that connect to come up in this other area here, right here by the city offices. We purchased that property because I think if someone says, what is your marketing points about Highland? Naturally, it's going to be the residents are here, what they bring, but it's our trail system. It's our parks. Now you're going to also our beautiful views. We always hear that we're close to recreational facilities. We're at the mouth of American Fork Canyon. Everyone can talk. That says American Fork Canyon. It's really the mouth of Highland. It's not American Fork. That's the mouth of Highland. You have to go to Highland to go up American Fork Canyon.
We got to get that changed.
We're now
Highland Canyon.
We're now calling it Highland Canyon.
We have 4 million cars that go into that canyon every year. 4 million a year.
Highland Canyon, sure, a pretty area, I think.
I think that's a great thing to ask our federal rep to change for us.
Yes.
We just start calling it ourselves Highland Canyon. Anyway, but that's our marketing. Now, like I said, it takes the families that are here to make it, and that's why I go to Ridgeview. I still see, even though we changed some of the density, there's really good individuals coming into Ridgeview. I've been really pleased with everyone I've met from that Ridgeview area. They've been good. That's our marketing.
That's right.
Come meet the people, and then come fill the community, and then you'll stay. So, there's my sales pitch.
And there's like nothing else.
Let's not forget safety.
What did you say? Oh.
Let's not forget safety.
You are correct. We're the number one safest city we've been for a long time. And that is a compliment to our Lone Peak Public Safety. I also think, and I know Scott, you brought up about Lone Peak Public Safety. We're having some good discussions on funding. But I think our fire does extremely good. I think our response times, I was surprised to find out right now, if you go to our neighboring communities, American Fork is struggling in that harbor area on the response times. I know they're trying to get another station. Lehigh just added one where they were 8 to 12 minutes out there by Mountain View Corridor. We are about 6 months response time anywhere in the cities. We're even talking up in Alpine. But Highland, we have a response time about 6 minutes. Now what we're trying to work through, and I'm sorry I'm going on a little tangent, we're trying to work through some staffing models to make sure that we have our full response with who's responding. But that is our city. We are safe. You come in here, we're safe. You're going to have trails and open space. I mean, your school systems are good too. You got good parents. Anyway,
can I bring up something a little different? When you said American Fork Canyon.
Highland Canyon.
Highland Canyon. Well, I understand that the National Park Service owns a piece of property east of the Highland East Stake up there on the south side of Timpanogos Highway to build a visitor center for Timpanogos Cave. That's in Highland, so I understand that. And I'm just wondering in our general plan if we shouldn't promote that a little bit and talk to our legislators and say, let's get it built. It's been on the plans forever, and that would be a nice addition for Highland, I think.
It was, now let me ask you, it'd be someone who's been here. Scott, that was a proposal to put a visitor center. So what he's talking about is you go up the Highland East Stake Center going up SR 92.
Timpanogos Highway, yeah.
Timpanogos Highway, going up to the Highland Canyon. Off to the right-hand side there, or off to the south. That area there by where the water area is. That is the federal government property.
That is, but don't we own a piece on the other side?
We do.
Yeah, with the
well.
well.
10 acres over in the gravel pit. We own 10 acres.
But no, I'm talking about on the south side of 1100.
It's just east of that stake center, but I understand they own that because they've talked about putting a visitor center there
I
forever.
could swear that we own something up here.
We own something a bit further to the east, Ron, but that's where we've got some water infrastructure there.
That's
And-
what it's for.
Okay, yeah, but in
Yeah, that's-
between that
I know,
and
I've
State
seen
Center.
it.
John, right here, you see this, there's a square piece.
Yeah.
At the park, that's where we have, I think it's a water pump station or pump house.
It's where where the debris basin
But
That's where it is.
everything, if you go look at the parcel maps, everything north of the LDS church there is in the United States of America.
Yeah.
Right, so, I don't know, maybe we could promote that.
Good idea.
And you could actually put, associated with that, you could have maybe a little.
Going back what Scott Smith's talking about, what you're saying, put in the general plan that we foresee or we envision a visitor center for the,
Encourage it.
going up to Timpanogos Cave or up to the federal property from the Highland Canyon.
Yeah.
Sounds good.
Love it.
Everyone else be supportive of that?
Yeah.
So one thing that I have heard a little bit about, again, wish list, right? Green waste recycling and glass recycling. I know the issues and the problems with that, but I just want to throw it out there. Especially the green waste, I think everyone's desperate to know where to dump their
Do we know why the
extra.
county stopped doing that?
Because they got sued?
They what?
Are we talking about, do you mean the county or
The
do you
green
mean
waste.
TSSD? TSSD got sued and can no longer do green waste because they, what do you call it? They turn it into the mulch, right?
Right.
They got sued because of the odor that it caused.
That was with the sewer though, wasn't it?
No.
They used the green waste, added some byproduct from the sewer and turned it into fertilizer.
Okay.
Yeah.
They can no longer do that because of the
Great
lawsuit.
source of mulch, by the way.
Okay, going back to what Wes was talking about, you're talking about green waste. Is there a service out there are there other cities, Wes, that you're seeing they're doing it?
Yeah, I mean, when I lived in Salt Lake and Sugar House, we had green waste and glass recycling. And, we're a small city, and I don't know. I have no idea about neighboring cities.
Was it private or public?
It was public.
Councilmember Smith will remember this. It was when I was an intern with the city 13-ish years ago. We looked into doing it, and again, a long time ago. We had to get, I don't know, it was between 1/4 and 1/2 of our population to sign up for green waste in order for, it was Republic Services at the time, to do it for us, and we couldn't get enough interest at that time. Things might have changed. The other thing that was actually interesting, I remember learning in that process, is it's actually good to let some green waste go to the dump because it helps break down waste. And so I think some people try to do it thinking that it's going to be more green, but in a way, it's actually good to send some of it that way.
So I'm on the board for North Point Transfer
yeah.
Station, and they're in the process of redoing their whole plan and building a new facility. And there is a lot of green waste that goes in there, and they're trying to set up ways to recycle it.
Oh,
and they actually have a private firm that's by the animal shelter that they pile it up there and they can sell it. So the goal is to move the green waste there because the TSSD can't do it anymore. So it's kind of interesting.
And they're hoping they won't get sued there.
Yeah.
I mean, it is kind of nice. You can go up there and buy mulch and stuff that they've.
Right.
Okay.
I think one of the other things, going back to the library discussion, I think that that idea of collaborating with other cities in the library, I think that the larger idea of fostering this spirit of collaboration with other cities for other services, just that idea, that concept is something that could be a feature of the general plan. Because I think that when you pool your resources, you can do these really great, wonderful things for residents that going it alone, unless you want 20 million in bond debt.
Well, it's never cost effective to duplicate services.
And then, sorry, I'm just like floodgates, right? I think another thing that we need to address, and this might be the place to do it as far as services provided, is making sure there's ways to safely walk in all the parts of the cities. I know we're addressing a lot of the sidewalks and stuff right now, and still a lot of other places that need sidewalks and safe ways to, traverse every street in the city. And I think that also includes getting across SR 92, especially as Highland Mains becomes developed and people are going to want to cross the street, and there's no safe way to do it unless you're at that intersection of Alpine and SR 92. And that might be working with MAG and with UDOT and doing some underpasses, pedestrian underpasses or something, but more than that, just sidewalks across the city.
I think what Wes brings up is a real good conversation, because we have areas of the city where we were missing sidewalks. One was Canal Boulevard. We see there, where we're going to be putting the bulb outs. There's still the other side where if anyone walks on Canal, there is no safe path. We're talking really down by Highland Elementary. We have a 10-400, right, the city center. We don't have a safe walking area, but we see people walking there all the time. I would actually think it would be wise to put in our general plan. I don't know what the wording would be, something about the city trying to put sidewalks in areas that we don't have it.
To make it more walkable, and it comes back to what Chris was saying, that's part of our, what is our proposition? What is the selling proposition?
Because the money that we put into beautification, aesthetics, that is money well spent in terms of the citizens seeing what we're doing as a city. Because I think that's the most visible thing. I mean, as a citizen and council member, we have, Scott rightfully brought it up, in council meeting last time. These dead patches of grass, and why is this happening? And it's such a visible thing, and by nature of being visible, it's what residents are going to see, and it's going to then filter through what they see, their overall opinion and happiness index of living in the city. How happy are they with the city services? And so, yeah, it's hard to carve out of the budget sometimes, maintenance for trails and upkeep and all that, but it really could be money well spent and well invested as far as just putting a stake in the ground as, we're Highland and we're gorgeous, and that's kind of our thing.
The staff and the mayor have hit that head on and are going full steam ahead to get that improved. And Scott, thank you for bringing it up last Tuesday, because it was a critical, it switched me. I came to that meeting thinking something differently, and then I left that meeting 100% on your side, that whatever we have to do to represent our city with our parks and with our green spaces, we need to do. That's it.
Prioritizing it.
There's no compromise there.
And I didn't know almost everything that Josh reported to the city about the situation of the water, and it was sad that I didn't know that, and I'm not sure even how many of the council knew that before Josh Castleberry was able to stand up and kind of report on it. But yeah.
So during another little twist here, since we're doing this, so we've kind of touched on it. So we got the 1.66 acres just east of the police station. I mean, are we thinking about maybe someday having a community center for senior citizens arts? It could be where the library did their programs.
Yeah.
Without being an additional library. I mean, just ideas. Now, don't we own the triangle across the road? So we probably ought in the general plan have some ideas about options for that triangle.
We like a dog park. We talked at one time.
And we talk about dog parks.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know, are we going to need it for parking if we do build a community center? I mean, is that an area that
It's got to be in the general plan of something that we are addressing.
So that, I think, okay, that's a good, we have some property we need to probably address of what we're doing. Like you said, we have the 1.66 acres. We bought, is it almost another acre, across the street?
Not directly across the street, is it?
It's across from UCCU.
Right. I mean, there's somebody who owns property in between the two. It's not just the street. Isn't that correct?
We own.
We don't own all the way to the street on the north side, do we?
I think we do.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
Oh, perfect.
Yeah,
I thought there was a little strip that was somebody else's.
Good question.
Perfect.
I wanted to go back to the pedestrian access to Highland Mains. What would it take to get UDOT to put a pedestrian bridge over?
$2 million.
A lot of money. A lot of money. I'm not sure what.
But what's the criteria? Does there have to be a certain
email.
population? I know they put one near Redwood Road. There was a lot of kids that crossed.
There was a high school there.
Okay.
Yeah, they're looking for demand, essentially.
So let's go, in the two that we know in Utah County, it's going to be UVU has one across the freeway. There's one down in Provo, and we almost could pull, that they put the belt across the railroad tracks to get to the front runner station. And it was expensive, because I remember being on MAG and we paid how much? Man, it was a lot of, but it is, one thing that's unfortunate, we are starting to see a lot of people getting hit as pedestrians. And I can't, I've been really surprised about what the accidents we're seeing in Utah recently of people getting hit and killed. Now, I don't know why people are walking at 1 or 2 in the morning either, but but I think your question is, there's a safer way to cross. From your west, we have the Highland Mains, we have our I think, is it something we need to look at Can they cross safely if they're there at Alpine Highway and the Highland Boulevard? Or I guess the Highland Boulevard is going to be Timpanogos Highway.
I think a really sensible action item for your general plan would be to explore potential options for a safer crossing across Timpanogos Highway. Now, whether that takes the form of a bridge or a tunnel, or even improved at-grade crossing, starting the conversations with UDOT, going through some of that, preliminary sort of stuff is going to open doors that might never be opened otherwise.
And then I think we need to look at the sidewalks within the city in our general plan and put a statement out that we're trying to, now see, like you look, 10400 and 6000 West, you have the big Bueller property. We're waiting for it to develop. Once they develop, also you get sidewalk all over it.
Yeah.
But we have the Pantos property. You guys have all seen it coming. We're now getting sidewalk, but we still have a gap all the way up to 10 up to the 6,000. We are putting the sidewalk along 6,000 in front of that church park. We've got some over by High and Elementary, but 6,000 West does not have a lot of sidewalk. And going down 10400, there's some gaps there. I don't know if we want to put that in the general plan that we're trying to close those gaps.
I think we do. That's exactly what Wes is talking about, is getting that to where it represents a place where people feel like they can go and live and walk, not just drive every place.
Especially around these schools,
I think 10400 and 6,000 West is important. You've got Mount Ridge Junior High, the kids are walking to one way, and you got Highland Elementary, they're walking the other way.
Can we just put something general in the plan about improving sidewalks, especially in high-risk or high-use areas, and not worry too much right now about
I think that's good.
where we're talking about?
We can,
Anything else under major services?
Is there a general consensus that there's desire to explore options for an expanded event meeting community space, whether that's for library, community center, whatever, something, generic, a new space, a new building? Not saying we're going to build it, we don't have the funds, but over here, and kind of incorporating the property the city owns as part of that kind of plan for expanding community spaces. Something like, keep it general, that's in the plan to look at that.
Potentially the library, but not necessarily.
We don't know. Leave it open.
That's what we're signaling to the community, what we're looking at that property for.
exactly.
Yeah.
Okay, that's excellent.
Do we want to put in about a library? Oh, no, it was the joint services. Look at doing something jointly with other cities for library expansion. Not necessarily an expansion of the
If you
library.
got your other cities participating in the library, that would pay for your expansion. Because the library's talking about going out east, and you wouldn't have to go out a long distance without doubling a lot of space. I don't know.
Great.
You always have to pay for these things, of course.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay. This has been a great conversation.
Is there any other area we see a park going in? I mean,
We will talk about parks and trails in our next meeting. So just that will be a more expanded conversation around that topic.
So one other way to accomplish some of this, I remember a few years ago we had it was like a fitness center, a gym come into the council meeting and want to, proposing this, hey, if we can put something in here, this is how, we can subsidize memberships for residents, and it was this way to get this facility paid for by someone privately doing it with public benefits. And I don't know if there's an appetite to solving some of these wants by going that direction, or if it's like not even a road we want to go down or address or touch. But
Probably if it's a professional soccer team going near the equestrian park, that would be a no.
dig it.
So Wes, what you're talking about, we did entertain, there was two different proposals where they were saying, hey, if you can, they would give some usage for the city, but they also wanted some discounting on their building fees. And I think as it started feathering out, and it's not always true of everything, but most of the things I've seen, but the guys that have the idea have no money, and they're always thinking that the Miller Group is also become funded.
Yeah.
I just, it's just.
It's not Miller Group anymore.
We've had good people, but I think it was either Lifetime Fitness or EO Fitness. They did come at one time looking, but naturally, to be honest, we didn't get sales tax there at the Longhorn Field. It was one of the things. But that was one of the areas we had the George Washington Museum being presented there. That was where the fitness had talked about. They looked at the equestrian center. The county was looking to sell that at one time, and so they were looking about putting a recreation, something there. It just, none of them really ever came about. It was just, like you said, it was, they had ideas. But I don't think the city's ever turned down if they came in.
Is there a benefit to putting something in the general plan that says where there's lack of services, the city will explore public-private partnerships? We've done that with some of our parks where we'll give priority uses to certain people as they improve it and do a lot of work on it and keep it nice. And we have arrangements like that. Do we want to formalize that in general plan or just kind of leave it as we have been?
Because it's already possible.
It is.
Without highlighting it.
We've done it. It's just
explicitly,
how we
but.
implement it.
I think this is like, to be honest, the community center, I can see a larger donor coming in and doing a community center.
Yeah.
I like public-private collaboration.
I've seen it in other cities, like event centers. There was one in South Jordan where there was it originally went in as a public-private collaboration to where publicly it could be used as a community center, event center kind of thing, but it was privately built, privately owned. They could rent it out as a huge facility. That seems, it's been a thing for 20-ish years over there, so it seems to be something working for them. But
Yeah.
I'm a little bit skeptical, frankly, about, particularly if we talk about a rec center, that being a good deal for the city and that working out long-term and not turning into just a skeleton that we have there in the city. But that having been said, I agree with Scott. I like public-private partnerships in general, and I think, yes, we should put something in the general plan about that.
Sounds great. We can do that.
So let's just say we like other people paying for facilities.
Yes.
I think we all do, right? Awesome. Okay. This has been great. Thank you all for your feedback tonight. We plowed through 2 elements of the general plan in one meeting, so
It's a great job.
it was good. So thank you very much.
With that, I don't think we need a motion to adjourn.
Well, Rob, tell us where we're going from here.
That's what I'm about to say. Our next meeting, we're going to cover kind of the last few elements of the general plan. And the plan is, I'm trying to get into this, to present a draft of the general plan to we'll present it to everyone, but for the commission to start considering in September, with a hopeful, we'll make some tweaks, adjustments, revisions, adopt or make your recommendation on general plan in October, giving the council time then in November to formally review the planning commission's recommendation with the hope that in our last meeting in December, we're going to adopt our new general plan. It's kind of a quick timeline. Landmark has a lot of drafting they need to do based on these meetings, but we are kind of towards the end of our conversations, and so it's time to start putting the actual book together.
Okay, so in August, we're going to be talking about parks and trails, is that right?
That's the plan. Yep.
And then in September, you're talking about planning commission would have a preview of it.
Planning commission is going to start reviewing the entire general plan.
The full draft.
The full draft, and then there'll be some comments, revisions, suggestions. They'll tweak it, and then ideally in October, the planning commission will make a final recommendation on a general plan for the council to consider in November and December.
So we'll make sure we have enough time.
Am I correctly recalling?
One more major area that we're approaching, that we're
In our next meeting.
in our next meeting.
Yeah, and it'll be parks and open space
Yep,
trails.
very
Yep.
good.
Yep.
Am I correctly recalling that there is part of the general, maybe it's the water section, that there's something that we have a requirement to finish up by the end of the year?
That's correct. That is the water element, yes.
So if we need to, we could potentially split that off, approve that in December and push to January.
Let's not have to.
If that's necessary, yes.
That would not be my first choice, but we do have that option.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay.
Very good.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Okay, with that, I don't think we need a motion to adjourn.
We're adjourned.
Thank you for being here.
Good to see you, Sherry.
You too.
8 o'clock.
I was here when you started.
Good job.
Wow, I don't know what to do with
Yeah, I'm
this.
surprised.